Time for some more kitchen table astronomy with Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed, Mr. Universe, who has just come back from your first glimpse into the growing world of space tourism. Now, space tourism is something we both have been somewhat critical about. The idea that space programs started out maybe as part of the military-industrial complex in a way to try to create territory in space, the Cold War, all that. We followed that throughout the last half century or more. But now it has been opened up to the general public. But not everyone in the general public. You got a glimpse into this in New Mexico. Tell us what you witnessed.
Right. So I went there because there was a tourist from Pakistan going up. And this person, I knew her, or I've known her for, I would say, close to about 40 years.
Because you're Pakistani.
Because I'm from Pakistan. And she, when I first met her, I had started an astronomy society in Karachi. And this was like 87. And she joined. She was one of the first female members of the society. And the first thing, from what I remember, of course, it's a reconstructed memory, but one of the first things she said was like, I want to go to space. And so she was one of those people who was absolutely fixated on going to space. And she just had the opportunity aboard Virgin Galactic. So you know about SpaceX, the Elon Musk venture. You have Blue Origins, which is by Bezos, and then you have Virgin Galactic by Richard Branson. I mean, there are others as well, but these are the three that are doing this. And so she went, and Virgin Galactic has its spaceport in New Mexico, actually pretty close to my grad school in Las Cruces. In fact, that's where we stayed. So she said, like, that when she was going, she had some sort of like, sort of like friends and family opportunity, like, that they could come and watch. And so I went over there, and I have mixed feelings about it, but overall, I mean, it's just fascinating because, I mean, again, you can always put on sort of like a little bit of an academic hat, and you actually get to see what is going on. So first of all, spaceport is beautiful. I mean, New Mexico is beautiful. Fabulous 505, I guess. Or 575. I think there are two area codes now. Yeah. But so that was quite amazing. And but then you also get to see the reality of space tourism. And so here was a case. This was not a rocket launch, by the way. This is an interesting way the Virgin Galactic is doing. So it takes sort of like, what they call a mothership. It has sort of like two sides, and in between the spaceship is attached to it, and then it goes up a little over 50,000 feet, and then it drops this space plane, and the space plane has a rocket that then ignites and then goes vertically up. So it's actually
so it launches like a plane.
Like a plane.
And then when it gets high enough, higher than most planes are traveling, like 50,000 feet, right?
Yeah.
Then it launches even further up.
Right, so it drops it. And that actually is kind of cool because what it does is, so it takes about 45-50 minutes for it to get that high. And then it just drops the space plane. Space plane goes vertical, fires up its engines, and then it goes straight up. And we could see from the ground just like this. I mean, of course, a tiny little plane, but then you could see this ignition.
Yeah.
You can actually see that from the ground, and then a chemtrail basically come up, and it goes vertically up, and it goes up to close to a little over 50 miles, which is considered as space by the U.S. International space line is about 62 miles. That's a common line, but the U.S. recognizes as 50 miles. And so it goes up over there, and then it just stops, and then it basically falls down right in there, and the people in the plane actually experience a few minutes of free-floating zero gravity in that sense. Of course, there is gravity. I mean, like, that's what you feel.
Do they not feel the sense of gravity because they're falling, or because they have hit this low Earth orbit where there is less gravity, like in the International Space Station?
Well, International Space Station is also falling, right? So everything is constantly falling. So that's why they just don't feel, because they are just falling towards it. And the plane goes upside down. How do I know this? Well, because the day before, when we were there, they gave us a full tour of the spaceport along with the simulator. They actually showed us what these astronauts, or astronauts, however you define it, or space
with
tourists,
air quotes,
what they will be seeing and what will be happening, which was actually extremely useful because we could actually see. So the plane would go sort of like upside down, and then and there were pictures, there were video of these people, including the friend of mine who went there. There were 3 space tourists and 1 pilot that was there. Interestingly, the pilot also was a Canadian of Pakistani origin. So that was actually kind of cool.
I feel like I'm so ready. I feel like I've always been ready.
It's a tribute to my father because he's the one who first introduced me to the stars.
I've been planning this for a long time. We're flying on the shoulders of giants.
And so it goes upside down, and you could see all of sort of like in New Mexico, sort of like these fields, and then you come down. To me, the other interesting thing, and these people when they came down, these 3 space tourists, they actually talked about it, that they went enough above the atmosphere that the sky was dark. It was during the daytime.
Yeah.
It's like middle of the daytime.
That's
It's
cool.
like it's around like 9:30 or 10 in the morning over there, and it's bright blue sky. Oh, I miss New Mexico. Did I say I miss New Mexico? Anyway, it's a big blue sky, beautiful, but they go up high enough that actually you see dark sky. And the moon was the first quarter, and they could see the moon. So you could see the sun and the moon and darkness.
Wow.
And so that I think is really cool. And so they came back. So I
Did
think
your friend finally acknowledge that the Earth is round? Were they high enough to see that?
yeah, well, I think that you don't have to go that high to find out. You may be high if you think that. But this was amazing. Now, the other thing I learned, and this is again one of those things, you can ask this question, well, okay, this space tourism, is it a fad? It's going to go away. Some people are doing it and things like that. To me, what was surprising was that no, it's not a fad that's going to go away. This is something that is building up. So for Virgin Galactic, what they told us was that 800 tickets have already been sold for these flights. And right now they can take about 1 flight a month. Because then it takes how much it times to get it ready.
With only 3 people on each flight plus a pilot.
As passengers, yeah. And they want to get rid of the pilot too, by the way. They say there'll be 4 people up. I mean, it's all automated.
That would be really scary. To be a space tourist, astronaut with no training, and no pilot while in space.
Well, it's no more scarier than sort of like, self-driving cars.
Yeah.
With Tesla.
I guess so. He's got his own program.
So the ticket right now, it's about 450,000 for this going up. My friend, by the way, this person sort of like from Pakistan, she actually went. She had bought in like 17 years ago. This was new, and that was 200,000. So
Yeah.
not
And it was
that
still
much.
just an idea.
That was
Get
just
in on the ground floor.
That's exactly right.
Get way off the ground floor.
But now it's 450,000, and 800 tickets have been sold, and they're not selling more tickets. So Monty, I did try. I was like, hey, Monty wants to buy a ticket, and they said no, sorry,
Sold out.
sold out. But because otherwise it's going to take too long. They are planning on having more spaceports and also a slightly bigger plane that can take 6 people as passengers. So that's just Virgin Galactic. You have others. There are also plans for balloons going up way high, and other types of these. SpaceX is actually taking people to orbital flights. This is suborbital. Blue Origins has plans. So to me, what it tells me is that this is not something that is a fad. This is happening, and this is going to mature even more. Space tourism is real. And of course, there are other questions that comes with that. Okay, well, what are the environmental effects to that? I think those are pretty serious.
Because the fuel to take these either planes and or rockets up into space is immense.
And I think that is something that you really have to think about it, because the narrative around it is also about that once you see the Earth from space, then your perspective fundamentally shifts. And so this is something called the overview effect, coined by Frank White, who interviewed a lot of astronauts. In fact, Frank White himself was there for this particular launch as well. And I think that may be true. I mean, obviously, I haven't been up. I cannot even go on merry-go-round. I get sick, actually, from there. So I haven't gone up. But I think it's an interesting context. It's an interesting question about, well, that yes, it gives you this perspective, but what is the cost of that? And I mean, I love the words, sort of like, as you know, like Carl Sagan, I mean, he wrote about the pale blue dot, like, seeing the Earth as a pixel. I think that just looking at that dot on your screen and the words that go around it, I mean, I think that gives me a far bigger overview effect without going to space. But again, I don't know to that question, but I think environmental concerns are real. I don't know how people are going to balance that, but because a lot of people did talk about a couple of people who went to space, about the betterment of the Earth. And so people who are going to space like this, they are enthusiastic about space. They may not be of the ilk of Elon Musk, for example, who wants to nuke Mars and says, well, it doesn't matter. The thing is that whether presenting it as an either or context, that either we go to space or we die, which is not the right frame, I think. So a lot of people are actually concerned about these things. They are also in promoting STEM education. One of the space tourists is a prominent STEM educator. But I think that would be interesting to see if this kind of space tourism evolve and to bring the environmental concerns in a different way, not just that we need to take care of the Earth because we can see it from the space that it is fragile. What to do about it, and if something like this impacts it itself, what are the measures we can take? So I think we're not there yet, but that would be a fascinating thing to develop. I am really glad to have gone there because it was just a glimpse into this thing firsthand. I mean, we can all talk about it, but this was a great opportunity to actually meet people, talk to people, see people who are actually doing that. How are they thinking? That's why I'm saying. And I found it actually weirdly sympathetic as well, because people are actually genuinely well-meaning in terms of thinking about making the world a better place. Now, the critique is there as well. I think in a few years, we will also start to see this balance of that and how it goes. I think that will be a fascinating way to see where things go.
Tell me what your friend, who is she officially the first Pakistani astronaut now?
Well, yes. And again, so, right. I mean, in that context, yes. So she's the first Pakistani in space with that definition. And she's also the first, I think, a woman.
What's her name?
Namira Salim. Namira Salim. And so yeah, I mean, I think that aspect is there.
Did she come back? You've been friends with her for decades. Did she seem fundamentally changed when she came back?
I mean, so
it's like only 3 minutes of weightlessness, but she did achieve her dream of going to outer space. Well, not outer space, but space.
Right, but think about it. So I actually interviewed her the night before she went up, and then I interviewed her soon after she came back. So
for Kainaat, which is in Urdu and English, it is available on YouTube, and sometimes I'm on there.
That's right. And so for Kainaat Studios, so I interviewed her before thinking about what she imagines what it's going to be, and then I interviewed her after thinking about, well, what did she feel? And I think, first of all, this is one of those cases where dream come true is exactly what it is, because this is what she always wanted to do, and she did that. She wanted to do somersaults in space,
Yeah.
which she actually did.
Yes.
So I think that was interesting. And one of the guys that were there with her, he's a filmmaker, and he had tears in his eyes even in space. You could actually see in the video, like, that he was actually overcome with emotion. And when they came back, all three of them, I mean, some of them, I mean, they had hard to describe feelings because they were speechless to a certain degree. And Namira herself, she actually talks about it. And for her, the most amazing thing was this seeing the dark sky and the moon and the sun, and sort of like, daytime in front of the dark sky. I mean, you could see the moon. Some people think you don't see the moon in the day sky, but you do. But to see it, the sky become dark. So for her, that was something that was actually quite incredible. And so I think it will be interesting how, I mean, like, maybe 5 years down the road or 1 year down the road, she may say, okay, she may reflect on that and tell us how she changed. Because as you remember, Monty, we talked about William Shatner, Captain Kirk. James T. Kirk. He went to space. He went on Blue Origins with Jeff Bezos, and that goes a little bit higher. And when he came back, he was elated. He actually was thrilled. He's 90 years old. It was quite amazing. But then a few months later, in fact, his autobiography has just come out a few months ago, in which he talked about that how terrified he felt when he was out in space. And for him, it was something, and he actually exactly put it in those words, that he thought that this would be the most joyous thing that he would have ever done, and he was looking for it so much, and yet he felt utter darkness, and he felt fearful of space, and he looked down and he goes like, what are we humans doing to this earth? And so those were very different comments than the comments that he gave soon after he came back. So that would be interesting. I interviewed another person who is slated to go in space later on, Anand Sadhwani. His parents were born in Karachi. I was born near Karachi, and so he's not going to space right now, but he plans to go later, and he's actually willing to go to the moon and to Mars as well. And I think he's an aerospace engineer. He may actually end up doing that. He's young and he actually wants to do that. So I think this is an interesting time. I mean, we've talked about these things before. I mean, there are two hats. One is, oh my goodness, space is so amazing. And this is happening right now. This is a very special time. And then the critical hat, that the cost that it takes, the cost to the environment that it takes, that is also happening at the same time. I genuinely hope that there is an answer to that question, and we don't do the same thing that we have done to the environment and we keep on doing, and that is to keep on expanding our needs, keep on getting our next day deliveries with Amazon and other things, while at the same time saying that we really need to save the environment. I think there needs to be a reckoning with that. Now, I think space can be an interesting place where this reckoning can come from people who are actually influential and who go like, you know what, this really we need to fundamentally change our thinking about it. We're not there yet, but that would be interesting.